Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining today's training.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Hi. So glad you were able to join. Good morning, folks. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to invite Buenos dias. Good morning. I'm going to wait a couple of minutes to let folks trickle in. We'll probably get started at 10:03. But thank you so much for being here this morning. I really appreciate it. We're super excited for Immigrant Day of Action. So I'm excited to share space with y'all now in preparation for critical advocacy. Please take the time to introduce yourself in the chat. Y lo voy a hacer brevemente también en español. Buenos días, compañeros. Muchas gracias por unirse a esta reunión. Esta presentación va a ser interpretada también en español y vamos a tener un anuncio oficial de parte de los intérpretes, pero se pueden introducir por medio del chat y vamos a comenzar en 2 minutos. Good morning, folks. Thank you for joining us. Hey, Maddie. Thank you for joining. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for introducing yourselves. Buenos dias. Good morning, folks. Yes, let us know your name, the organization you're repping, as well as just the region you're in. We have a lot of folks mobilizing this year to IDA, which I'm so excited for folks to get to meet each other, get to know each other, and we continue to do that critical organizing and ski on behalf of our communities. One more minute and we'll get started. Buenos días otra vez, muchas gracias por unirse. Por favor, introduzcanse por medio del chat. Esta presentación va a ser interpretada al español también. Good morning, buenos días. All right, folks. We're gonna get started now. I'm gonna ask Asusha to also help me in admitting folks. There's a lot of folks still trickling in. But thank you again. We're gonna get started. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Xochitl Sanchez. I am the statewide organizing manager for the California Immigrant Policy Center. Thank you for joining today's training. As you all know, it's part of a series that will include storytelling and media training. We'll also be talking about our policy platform. You'll be hearing directly from the policy analysts and authors who put forth these bills next week. And then before Immigrant Day of Action, we'll have a lobby orientation training led by our incredible government affairs team. And you'll be able to hear about all the ins and outs and everything you need to know about legislative advocacy for Immigrant Day of Action. For today's training, we actually have two really great presenters, and I'm gonna be able to just share. It's gonna be our communications director, Ed, and Polo Morales. To get started, we're gonna open up interpretation, and I'm gonna allow the interpreters to share a little bit more about the instructions and how to join. Natalie, can we go to the next slide? Thank you.
Thank you. Hola a todas y todos, muy buenos días. En un momentito vamos a iniciar la función de interpretación. En la parte baja de su pantalla van a ver un icono que dice Language Interpretation. No está ahí ahorita, va a aparecer en un segundito. Una vez que esté ahí, presione y seleccione el idioma de su preferencia. Y también Mute Original Audio o silencia el audio original. Si está en un teléfono o una tableta, hay 3 puntos en la parte baja. Presione, luego seleccione Language Interpretation Después selecciona el idioma de su preferencia y también Mute Original Audio. Si por cualquier motivo tiene problemas con esta función, puede regresar y presionar donde dice Unmute Original Audio. Y si tiene algún problema técnico, déjenos saber a través del chat. Muchísimas gracias. So hello everyone. In just a second, we're going to enable interpretation. An icon will appear at the bottom of your screen that says language interpretation. Once it's there, click and select the language of your preference, either English or Spanish, and also mute original audio. If you're in a tablet or a cell phone, you're going to see three dots. Click, select language interpretation, then the language of your preference, and also mute original audio. If for any reasons you're having issues with that function, just go back and unmute the original audio or let us know through the chat and we'll be able to help you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Edna. Interpretation has been made available. Please choose the language that you prefer. Natalie, next slide, please. So I'm going to hand it off to the first presenter. Please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Ed Cifuentes. As such mentioned, I am the Communications Director for CIPC, and my co-presenter will be Polo Morales. He is CIPC's Deputy Director for Programs and Campaigns, and you will hear from him a little later. So we're here today to provide a bit of training that will hopefully help you participate in IDA and advocate for the issues that we all care about. Hopefully this training will help you not just during IDA, but beyond. IDA, as many of you know, is CIPC's largest annual event, bringing together hundreds of people from across the state to celebrate and advocate for immigrant rights in Sacramento. Each year, collectively, we pick a set of policies that we advocate for together by showing up in great numbers and visit with lawmakers in their offices and ask them to support our policies. This year's theme is Rise Up for Immigrant Rights, Empowering Communities and Strengthening California. That was specifically chosen to address the actions by the Trump administration that instill fear and division in our communities. And we want to uplift our strength and our communities and strengthen our state overall to resist these policies. Next slide, please. So, welcome to our training. Here's a bit more of how we'll spend our time together. We'll talk about how to be a powerful storyteller, some language and messaging recommendations, followed by some media training, how to give an interview and how to talk to reporters, how to prepare yourselves for an interview, and what kind of things to keep in mind during an interview. And then we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions. We'll leave time for you to ask us what is on your mind, what questions you have, and hopefully how to best answer them. Next slide. Okay. Now I'll hand it off to my colleague, Polo Morales, to talk about storytelling.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here this morning with you all. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how storytelling functions and why it works and whatnot. But what I'll have an opportunity to share a little bit about myself. You know, we have to practice these things. So I'll do a little bit of a sample of a story that I have to share with you all today. And so we'll begin here now. So storytelling is a powerful tool for advocacy. It has the power to persuade people to act. And the great thing about storytelling is that we all have a powerful and unique story to tell. For us as advocates, storytelling truly is an act of leadership. For those of us whose stories might have been ignored or taken away from us or silenced, our voice is our individual power. So we want to start off with that premise today. If we can go to the next slide. All right, so, and I think we're ahead on the slides, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. Okay. All right. as we all know, telling our stories is one of the most effective and powerful ways of persuading and changing other people's minds because humans rely on their emotions more than anything else when it comes to making decisions. And so building interpersonal connections and building empathy through storytelling is truly the quickest and most effective way to tap into your audience's emotions and values, and therefore influence how they feel and the decisions that they will make in the future. To use storytelling effectively in an advocacy campaign, you will want to start by identifying the policy issue you want to talk about. It may be something like food assistance or health coverage. Then you'll need to identify your relationship to that issue and what it means to you, to your family, and to your community, and show how it impacts you, how it shapes your daily life. And so building on that personal narrative, you can talk about the policies that you are advocating for that will make things different, right, or better. If you can show how these policies can improve your life, then you can show how they will make other people's lives better too. And that is how you build the connection with your audiences, whether that is a person listening to you speak at a rally or in a TV interview or directly to your representative in the legislature. And so how do we harness our authentic story? One is we need to identify uh, our relationship to the issue or your relationship to the issue. How is this impacting me? Feel, right? What's at stake for you, for our communities and for our shared future? How does it make you feel? How does it make others feel, right? There's emotion to the storytelling. Connect, the proposed legislation to your lived experience and to the change you know is needed. And so as we are calling for change, we need to be able to connect it to something that is real and tangible. So something that we can actually work towards as a solution. Without that, we're just telling a story and things are not going to change. But if we connect it to something that can change, then that opens up some opportunity. And lastly, choose the words that you will do justice to your truth. And so the words that you use are important. The words that we use help communicate to others all of these things, right? How do we feel? How do we connect to the issue? Why is this important? Why should you get involved to make that change to be able to better the lives of others? So if we can go to the next slide. All right, so building and telling your authentic story. So who are you? That's a great philosophical question. You are a multi-dimensional person, right? So you have many dimensions to yourself. People see you and they think things of you. You see yourself, you think things of yourself. In your family, people see you a certain way. At work, people see you in a different way. And so for us, our role in society is how we relate to other people. And so we relate to other people. You know, I am a father of two teenage boys. I was a former teacher or I'm a neighbor to somebody down the street. I am, you know, deputy director of programs for CIPC. So there are many roles that we have. And so for the purpose of telling a story, we want to make sure we get to those level of specifics, right? What gives you, you know, some understanding, experience to be able to talk about the issue that you're going to be talking about, right? So if I'm a teacher and I'm talking about education, that means a lot. Why does this matter to you? That's also a very important question, right? How does it connect, you know, to commonly shared values? You know, if family is a value that we lift up, or community, or compassion, care, shared prosperity, transparency, equality, freedom, safety, social justice, these are all issues that we can all agree upon that are universal. They're not just for one person or one community, but all across the world, we can all agree that these are important to think about. And so as we're building our storytelling, our ability to be able to translate our experience into somebody else's ears, it's important to really be grounded in those values, right? We're not just telling a story for the sake of telling a story. We're trying to share that this is important because we can all agree that this is important in this case. And so if we can actually, yeah. The more vivid your story is, the more likely it is to resonate with your audience, whether it's a legislator or a journalist also here. And the more likely it will be persuasive to them by allowing them to see you and to feel they have something in common with you. So you connect through those values. how do you tell a vivid story, right? By building and telling your authentic story. This is going to take some introspection. So as we think about our emotions or who we are, we need to think about how we engage with the world, right? And if we engage in the world in a way that others define who we are, right? We have to step in and say, actually, authentically speaking, from my perspective, this is what I believe, this is what I think. So you're going to ask yourself, who am I? And allow myself to, be that multidimensional person, right? Many dimensions to me. But I'm going to choose specifically what role, right, relates to the issue that we're talking about here today. So if this is important, right, we need to relay that information to others. We need to share those values with others. After you tell your story, you're going to want to include a call to action to build a sense of urgency for others to join your cause. Without a call to action, we're just talking, right? If there's no next step, if there isn't a will you support us, or do you support this bill or this budget ask, we're just talking and we're not going to get anywhere. So we need to be able to ask, make that ask of somebody that has the ability to make that change, to take that next step. And I think we're staying on the same slide here, just for notes. Moving forward here, there are some basic building blocks to a good story. If you've ever listened to anybody tell a bad story that goes on forever and rambles and doesn't have a point, and there's plenty of examples of that. We have a current administration that is an expert at that. What is the point, right? What are we talking about here? We need to make sure that our story is a good story, and all good stories have a character. That's you. That is faced with a challenge. There is a challenge that is faced that needs to be overcome. And that there are forces to make them make a choice resulting in a certain outcome. So when you make a choice, right, because you're facing a challenge, then you have a story to tell. Then what is the underlying progression to that story, the moral, the thing that we're learning here? We can only do that through getting to the point, right? The moral of this story is, if you remember, fairy tales always have a moral, right? That's why we don't do this. That's why we should do that. That's how we teach children to understand. And so all good stories have a point. They have a challenge. They have a decision point to be made. They impact somebody personally. And there's an outcome to that, right? That's how you close the stories, by having an outcome. And we also have to use emotion, right? If we tell stories like a robot, it's just our heads but not our hearts, then it doesn't feel compelling to somebody else. It doesn't change their perspective because they're not feeling the emotions. We put our head and our heart together, right? The information, the facts, but also the emotion of why this is important. And that is how we connect with people. So if you ever watched a novela, or you ever watched a movie, and you're sucked into that character's life, they're going through something difficult, and you see your eyes getting a little watery, and then if they really, really connect with you, your tears start coming down, then that's, that is a good story, because it's making that connection with you. It's making you understand what the character is going through, and then you're trying to root for that character to make sure that they're successful, or they can overcome this challenge. And so we use these, some of these action motivators is we turn, all the bad stuff, the sense of urgency, the anger, and anger turns into hope, solidarity, the idea that you can make a difference. We overcome these inhibitors. Inertia is like when you're just kind of stuck in place, you can't move. Apathy is like, oh, nobody cares. Why are we even doing this? The fear, the isolation, the self-doubt, all that is overcome by telling stories, because we connect with other folks. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you an example of a little bit of a personal story. So we're going to go back to when I was a little boy. Okay. So just imagine me without the beard and without the glasses and not being able to see very good, because I didn't know I needed glasses. When I was a kid, Um, and I grew up here in the San Gabriel Valley in El Monte, a little town called El Monte. And I remember I used to love school. I would love going to school every single day. And I loved learning and, having my mom, who was an undocumented immigrant. She was from Mexico. She was from Jalisco. She always told me, education is important. You have to learn, you have to get ahead. And she was working at a sewing factory at the time. And so I remember there was exceptions to that sometimes. And I would be forced to choose, right? On the one hand, my mother was telling me education is important. And on the other was, hey, mijo, your tia needs you to translate for her. I know you're only 9 or 10 years old, but I need you to take the bus with her tomorrow to be able to translate at the emergency room. And so okay. Um, I was promised going next door to Burger King at the LA County USC Medical Center. There used to be a Burger King down the street. I don't know if it's still there, but General Hospital is what it used to be called when I was a kid. And so I would ride that bus and I would go with my aunt and I would translate for her, the doctor is saying this, the doctor is saying that. And then the doctor would always be like, why are you coming to the emergency room? And why didn't you do something before? And so, and I had to translate that to my aunts and my tia, and I'd be like, tia, the doctor is saying that why didn't you come here before? And so the answer was always, I just couldn't. I just couldn't. And so we would wait all day long. I would miss a whole day of school. I would get my Burger King after translating. My aunt would get some help, would get some medicine, and then we would get back on the bus and go back to El Monte. And so as I got older, I started realizing a few things, right? When we had to do this because we couldn't afford, my aunt definitely couldn't afford, we couldn't afford, my mom couldn't afford, a lot of my family members couldn't afford paying to go see a doctor at the clinic. And so not being able to see a doctor at the clinic means that you wait until things get bad and bad and bad until they get really bad and it gets worse. And so a lot of folks were ending up in the emergency room. And so over time, what we've been able to do, right, is take those experiences. There's many little polos and probably little polas over many, many years, right, that had to do this. But over decades, we fought to be able to include Medi-Cal, right, for undocumented immigrants. And it's so they don't have to wait to get to the emergency room when things are really bad. And so when we create systems that work for people, they're able to take care and of themselves, of their families, they continue to work, they continue to live a dignified life. But as long as they're not afforded that, because I had another aunt that wasn't able to get help in time and she passed away. And those are the realities that we had to contend with, right? We didn't know what was wrong with her until it was too late. So in this moment in time, when the state legislature is making decisions or, the federal government is making decisions and cutting some of the healthcare for immigrants or the programs that we fought so hard to make sure that folks were not waiting to the last minute to be able to get help. This is an important moment for us to take action, to act, to have our voices heard, and to reach out to our legislators in the state and in the federal government to be able to say, you can't do this because there's too much at stake. There's too many people that would be impacted negatively. Okay, so I'm gonna stop here. I don't know if I have another slide after this. I think I might, I don't know. Okay, all right, so we're gonna recap here a little bit. And put it in the chat for those of you that can. Did I lead with a shared value that you connected with? Put a thumbs up if you've connected with my story. Okay, good. All right, good job, Polo. Consider local dynamics. Did you get a sense of where I grew up, what I had to do? Were you with me in school? Did you ride the bus with me? Did you connect with that too? All right, thumbs up, right? Okay, good. All right. did I have different messengers for this, right? Did we have different voices that were heard in my story? Okay. Lots of thumbs up, hearts. Okay, good. Did I show and not tell? I know I did get a little preachy at the end, but if you were on the bus with me, if you know my tia in your head, you have an image of my tia. The emotions that I felt, the having to translate, all of that is an expression, right? It's an emotion that what do you do with information like that? Basic facts information and using humanizing language, right? My aunt was a human being or is a human being. I have an aunt who's still a human being, even though she passed away because she didn't get enough help early on. But all this to say, if you heard my story or anybody else heard my story, you would feel compelled to do something about it, right? And if I, put a thumbs up if you feel like we need to do something right now to protect healthcare. Okay. All right. So this is the importance of telling a good story, even if it's a short story, to be able to connect with people, to be able to get them to respond, to act, to be able to move forward, with us and not against us. Okay. I don't know if there's another slide, but I think there might be. This is Ed's part right now. I'm going to hand it back over to Ed, and thank you for listening to my story. We all have stories to tell, and I look forward to listening to your stories. Take it away, Ed.
Thank you
you.
for sharing.
Thank you, Polo. Appreciate that. I know that I saw a couple of hands up. I just want to say that we will have a space at the end to get questions from you. So we're going to move through this presentation and then keep your questions in your mind, write them down if you need to, and then we'll have, again, a space to have your questions answered. Again, my name is Ed Cifuentes. As I mentioned, I am the Communications Director for CIPC. Before I get started, I'll tell you something a little bit about myself, model some of that good storytelling that Polo was talking about. Before I joined CIPC, I worked at the ACLU of San Diego for about 7 years. I was a communications strategist and then deputy communications director there. And before that, I was a newspaper reporter for about 15 years. I worked in the San Diego Union Tribune covering immigration for many of those years. And so I also come from a background of my parents came undocumented from Mexico, from Jalisco as well, as a matter of fact. And so I have a lot of those personal experiences, and I connected with Polo when he was talking about having to interpret for his family members. That's something I had to do as well. So that's a kind of a universal issue for us as Latinos, as people who experienced migration. And so that is sort of what the kind of stories that we need to use to be able to advocate for ourselves, for our communities, for our families. And so hopefully this portion of the training will prepare you to tell that story, not just to your lawmakers, but maybe beyond that, to the media, to a reporter if you need to. And so one of the things that I like to do when I get started with one of these presentations is ask, how many of you have done a media interview in the past? Like to get a sense of who the audience is and where you are in terms of media training. Thumbs up if you've done a media interview in the past. I'm looking through and looks like there's a few of you have done that. I see some thumbs up. Thank you. So hopefully wherever you are on that journey, you'll be able to take something from this training. Hopefully you'll be able to learn something that will be helpful to you in the future. Next slide, please. So another thing that I'd really like to get started with these presentations is that you should never agree to or do an interview if you don't feel comfortable. You should never be pressured into do an interview, period. I know that a lot of us, when we have someone approach us and start asking us questions, we feel sort of compelled to engage with them. But the media is a different thing, and you should always be empowered to say no, that I don't want to give an interview. That said, if you do want to participate and share your experience, we would be very grateful, because there is no better way to advance our cause than to share people's experiences. That is just, people can relate to human experience, the human experience of others, and there's just no substitute for that, as Polo mentioned in his presentation. So some of the tips that I would like to give you before taking an interview are very sort of self-explanatory. And you should talk to your communications professionals if you have one available before you do the interview, and ask if you have any questions before you do and agree to do the interview. Things like, am I the right person to talk about this issue? And if you have any doubts about doing that interview, then you should make that known. In most cases, communications professionals should be able to provide some talking points for you to practice. And preparation is really, really important before you do an interview. You and the last thing that I'll mention here in this portion is to be intentional. What does that mean? Well, what that means is just don't wing it, don't go unprepared. Even if you're an expert on an issue, that doesn't mean that you can be spontaneous necessarily, and pull on the right threads and weave a coherent argument. Some of these media interviews, so in a way, they're a performance. They're not like you talking to your best friend or a family member. It is a performance. You will be either on a news story in print, or on a radio, or on TV. So practice your talking points. Again, consult with communications or someone who can help you and get prepared with the most likely questions that will come up, and even some tough questions. Next slide, please. So after you are prepared and have agreed to an interview, one thing to remember is to always stay on message. And if it is a pre-scheduled interview, then be on time. Make sure that you will be available during that time. Reporters may always cancel. They may reschedule an interview, and that happens all the time. But you should be available and on time. Not only because it's just bad manners, but it also missing an interview is a missed opportunity to get our message across. And so sometimes it will be obvious that a reporter has a planned out idea about what kind of story they want to tell. And they might start asking you questions that will lead you away from your message. We'll talk a little bit more about how to deal with that situation little bit later, but it's important to be prepared for that. And again, interviews, media interviews are not normal conversations. You don't have to answer questions or every question directly. Instead, you can always find a way to bring back the interviews to the points that you want to get across. It's important to always remember to stay on message, and it's okay to be repetitive. You don't have to go and elaborate and go off topic. In fact, you should try to stay on topic. This will increase the chances that the final story that the reporter puts out will have the message that you want to be focused on. Um, uh, one thing that you can always do also is provide supportive data, facts or examples that will drive home that top message that you want to provide. Use anecdotes. Anecdotes are very important. Try to use visual language. We heard Polo talk about, being in that hospital, being in that environment with a doctor and having to interpret uh, to his aunt. I mean, that literally put you there. And that's what you need to do. You need to be able to tell a story that puts people in that place. That is just it's the magic. It's something that you can't get from reading a scientific report or uh, um, any polling or any of that kind of data. You can bring those stories and make those issues come alive for people. But you do have to be concise. Again, when you are talking to a reporter, they may talk to you for 15 minutes, they may talk to you for an hour, or even more. But most likely, what is going to come out is going to be maybe a couple of seconds soundbite, or maybe if you're lucky, you'll get maybe a half a minute on that story. So use short sentences, active verbs, simple language. Keep your answers concise, and that will ensure that you are quoted accurately. Also, stay away from one-word answers like yes or no or maybe, because then you're also missing an opportunity to deliver your message. So brief, concise, and accurate is what we want to deliver. If you're, a policy expert, or if you're an attorney, you want to stay away from jargon. You want to stay away from acronyms. I know that in this space, in this movement, we have a lot of, ways to shorten some of the things that we talk about. Try to stay away from those. Use language that anybody in the public will know and will be able to recognize. Stay positive. One of the things that reporters will always look for is maybe some drama, some controversy, some conflict. They will want to highlight that. So when you are talking to a reporter, be positive, and stay away from negative framing in that maybe even the reporter will ask within their questions. Another thing is don't speculate. If you don't know the answer, say that and tell them I'll get back to you on that. Uh, Reporters sometimes will ask, well, what if kind of questions, and they were trying to lead you into a narrative that you may not want to go to. So if you hear that from a reporter, well, what if so and so would do this, or what if this happens? Just let that be a bell in your ear, and don't get derailed by hypothetical situations. Yeah, reporters again will always use that to that sort of zero-sum game to steer us away from what we want to talk about and how we want to frame things. A little later on, again, we'll learn some bridging phrases that will get us back to the main points that we want to deliver. And one thing that may be obvious, but never lie to a reporter. Reporters are trained to detect people who are not telling the truth. And again, may seem obvious, but sometimes when we're nervous or we don't know the answer to a question, we may say something that is wrong. And so don't be afraid to say, I don't know the answer to that question. Just say, let me get back to you on that, or I don't have that information. And so that's something to keep in mind when you don't have all the answers, and none of us do really. So don't be nervous. Don't be nervous about telling someone you don't know. And again, just be yourself. One thing that sort of related to that is that we don't want to exaggerate situations. Um, if you're not sure, don't guess. If like numbers, reporters might ask you, well, what percentage of the population is without health care or something like that. If you don't know the answer, again, don't be afraid to say, let me get back to you. I don't know the answer to that question. Someone will follow up with you to give you more specifics on that. And if you do that, make sure that you do follow through and you let someone know within your team to be able to get back to the reporter. Another thing that, again, when we get nervous, we want to fill that silence. And sometimes, reporters will do that. They will pause and they will stop asking questions, just thinking that you'll want to fill in that silence. And don't be afraid to just wait for the next answer. It's not your job to fill those silences. Once you've answered your question, stop, wait, and wait for the next question. If the interviewer rephrases your answers, make sure they're correct. Especially when they're quoting back statistics or data back to you, make sure that those statistics are correct. And make sure to correct them on the spot if you have that right away. And so one other thing that I like to tell the folks that I work with who are going into interviews that maybe are not very savvy about or are new to doing interviews is that when you're talking to a reporter, just keep in your mind that nothing is off the record. Whatever you say during an interaction may be published, depending on how ethical a reporter is. If you want to say something off the record, you have to ask the reporter, can we go off the record? And the reporter needs to say yes. They need to agree. You can't say, can we go off the record? And then after that, assume that everything after that is off the record. But just as I always say, just assume that nothing is off the record and don't say anything that you wouldn't want published in a story. I had a boss previously who, she was very media savvy and she was very she had done many interviews and knew a lot of reporters. And afterwards, after the interview was sort of over, they would get into chats, conversations about, hey, how's this going? And then I could see the reporter's mind, turning and start to ask questions back into the topic of the interview. And so that's one way to sort of let your guard down and then get you back on the topic that they want to, and then they start getting more information that you think, well, we're just having this conversation, but then it becomes something that you could be quoted on. So just keep in mind those sorts of situations. Next slide, please. So, so what do you do if you're asked one of those what if hypothetical questions, or when you're asked something that gives you two or more, a choice between two or more bad options? One of the strategies that we like to train people on is blocking and bridging. That means you block the question, and then you sort of dodge it. You go on to something else. It's a good way to transition from a question that is being asked that is really not going to lead you to a good situation, and then into more safer territory by getting back on messaging. For example, if a reporter asks you, if we provide money for these programs that benefit undocumented, doesn't that take away from the ability to provide programs for homeless people or for homeless veterans? And that's and that if it's kind of like a food access program, you could say something like, I see why you're asking that, but what we are proposing is that no one in California, no matter what your immigration status, goes to bed hungry. So that is one way to transition from that bad framing that the reporter is trying to get you into, and to go back to your talking points. And there's several of these phrases. I'll tell you about a couple of them. You can say something like, that's a very common misconception, but what I do know, and then go back to your talking points. Um, or you can say, something like, I can't speak to that specifically, but the bigger issue here is, and then you go back to your talking points. So again, be confident, be yourself. And when you're confident, it'll show. Tell your own story in your own words, and don't be distracted into bad narratives, bad, sort of bad storytelling. And before you take an interview, just prepare yourself, and practice your talking points, and hopefully you'll have a good experience that you can then remember, and then build off of and learn from. Next slide, please. One last thing that I'd like to leave you with is to try to know your audiences. That's a little bit of more of a separate conversation, but I think it's an important one to keep in mind whenever you're doing an interview, and even before you do that interview. There's different people who are in different phases, and there are people who just lack in education about a certain topic or are misinformed, and then there are people who envision different ways of addressing an issue that we disagree with, or disagree with us in the approach of fixing that And then there are people who don't see a problem and, don't care about people's humanity and just, don't want to fix anything. And so there are people in that spectrum. There are people who are with us and are our allies. And then there are people who are just, you're never going to be able to persuade. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. So researchers will tell you that, again, people are on that scale. There are those that agree with us, and they are maybe the people in this room to whom you don't really need to convince. What we need to do with folks like that is to motivate them to do and take action in a way that we need them to. And then there are people who are somewhat, in the middle. A lot of people are in the middle and maybe are opposed to our solutions for various reasons. And researchers call those people persuadables. Those are people who, with the right message, we might be able to persuade them to our side. And for those, we just need to provide information, give greater context, and we do that by staying on message. And for the people who are, misinformed, we need to provide them information, and then, but always staying positive, and then try to connect and move them to our side. Again, there's always going to be people who are just not going to be with us. They're never going to be, and we just need to try to recognize that, and then just turn away from those folks. We don't need to waste our time with them. So that's just sort of a very brief. I know that we are getting close to time, so thank you very much for listening and for being here. We love to have you here, and hopefully you've learned something. And now we will have some time for you to ask us questions, and hopefully we'll be able to help you out.
Thanks, Ed, and thank you all for listening and raising your hands. There were a couple of questions that were dropped in the chat. So I'm going to address those first, and then I'm going to be able to have Petrolina ask her question. But Jorge Plasencia asks, is there going to be a designated communications team we can connect with if a reporter approaches us? This is for Immigrant Day of Action specifically.
We definitely will. I will be there, and so will my colleague who is here in the room, Natalie. She is CIPC's communications specialist. She will be there, and you can always come to us. Hopefully we'll be easily identifiable and visible. And if a reporter does approaches you and asks you for an interview, if you don't feel comfortable, come to me and I will handle it. Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you for affirming that, Ed, and Natalie as well. Michelle Rincon also asked in the chat, any advice on how we can avoid getting our interview sliced and distorting our message? I know you addressed this a little bit, Ed, but could you elaborate?
Yeah, that is kind of a tough question. All you can do is do your best, be positive, stay on message, don't get drawn into those that bad framing again. But in the end, some reporters are just going to be unethical, especially if they're from certain outlets with a certain point of view. They will use whatever they can to distort what the messages that we're trying to put out. That's one of the things that I try to do when I get a media interview request is figure out, okay, where is this reporter coming from? Who do they work for? What kind of track record does that outlet have? And if it is some outlet that I know is extreme, then I will flag that for the folks that I am sort of brainstorming with, whether to provide an interview. So yeah, be aware of that. If you run into that situation at IDA, let me know, and I can try to maybe either deny the interview or maybe hand it to somebody who has a little bit more experience in handling those kinds of interviews.
Thank you, Ed. Petrolina, you have a question? You can unmute yourself and ask Ed directly.
Good morning. Thank you for having this very wonderful presentation. I am Petronila Fernandez. I am living in the Bay Area, especially the Contra Costa. I am a parent and community fellow as a person because in the area we are living right now for this situation, I think so you bring important, very, very important topic regarding the how can we dealing or explaining to other person when we share our stories. I am curious about the way Mr. I think so, Mr. Ed, when you said, can we go off for to record? I missed that part, but I wondering if you have time, share a little bit like quickly how this work, because I am a person getting a lot, no interview, but sometimes in education and like social justice, and sometimes it's misunderstood. It's great to know in advance how can we get the right answer when we don't know. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for this.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. And my advice is that you're always should be careful when a reporter asks you to go off the record. And unless you're like really comfortable with the specific reporter that you're talking to, I would not go off the record with a reporter, because if you don't know them, you don't know their ethics. You don't know if what you say off the record will really stay off the record. So just in general, I tell people that don't say anything to a reporter that you wouldn't want on the record in a story, even if you're off the record. Um, uh, just be very mindful of that. And unless you have a lot of experience, I would definitely say, no, let's just keep everything on the record, and I will answer the questions that you have as best I can. And again, always stay on message. Don't go off into territories that you wouldn't want to end up in a story. There's a whole lot of other um, if you're a more experienced person dealing with media, background, and there's other, words that they will use to try to steer you into a situation where you think they're not going to be able to use what you say, but will actually be able to, they'll actually be able to use it. So I would just say, just stay away from agreeing to off the record.
Thank you for your voice. I will be just quickly. You facilitate this information by email, or you have another chance for this opportunity for more community member? I am curious too because as a parent too, I wear a double hat, but I think so it's very important to prepare our community too, because I advocate in education system, and sometimes getting in the education because we are in the broken system. I'm sorry with that, but it is true. And sometimes when someone asking why, things like that, I don't want to get confused, right?
Yeah.
And this is good to prepare. Thank you so much for both of you and all for give this wonderful presentation. And thank you, Mr. Paolo Morales, because I really impact me when you say health regarding your history with your tia. yes, definitely we need to work on that to getting more voices. Thank you so much, Al, for having me to speak. Thank you.
Yeah, for everybody, the email in the slide right here, that's my email. Feel free to contact me with any other questions. I'm happy to help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I will be following up with all the attendees directly. You will get the recordings in English and Spanish, so feel free to share that with other community members. And I thank you all for joining, and also share that this year we have a 2-day advocacy event for our conference on April 8th. We have over 400 people registered. And for our Rally and Advocacy Day, we have over 900 people who have registered. So if you know other community members that are joining us, that are part of your group, that are, you know, your homies who you know are coming, please let them know about the training series. We want folks to feel prepared and to really build momentum to Immigrant Day of Action. As you all know, this year we are facing unprecedented policy dismantling at the federal government that is really impacting our communities throughout. So I want to applaud everyone's courageousness, resilience, and willingness to keep our critical advocacy going. And I really appreciate y'all taking the time for joining us today. So we'll see you all in April in Sacramento, and thank you again for joining this training. Have a good day, folks. Thank you, and I really appreciate you joining. Thank you for the 5 rating, Petrolina. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
You too. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks. CIPC team, can we stay on for just 2 minutes to just check in? Thank you all for joining. I'm gonna start removing. Okay, there's one more person here. Sorry, just putting folks in the waiting room.
Polo, do you want to ping Ed to come back?
Oh yes, Ed.
Yeah.
How are we feeling? Good, we're okay. Congratulations, we got one done.
We had one more question in the pipeline that I wish we could have gotten.
The guide, right, from Marcus? Yeah, can follow up with him directly. I'm also gonna invite folks to ask more questions once I send a follow-up email.
Interpreter asking if we need to have them on still.
No, Edna, thank you so much, and Julie, Jesus Ramosa, you guys were really great. So really appreciate you. And I know we had a lot of compañeros in the Spanish audio channel. So thank you for your incredible work. I will be following up with you and coordinating with Eliana as well for the next 2 trainings. Thank you. Bye, Julie. Bye, Edna. Appreciate you. Yeah, just any general feedback. How are folks feeling? This is the biggest number we've had of attendees since last year. Even we've more than doubled the attendees for this particular training. So shout outs to that. based on the numbers of attendees, we have a lot of folks missing. So we do have an opportunity to just keep doing that critical outreach and folks, knowing that this exists and they should be on and they should have their compañeros on too. Any other reactions, reflections?
I thought for myself, I could have been a little more prepared because the slides weren't matching with the content for a little bit, or at least it
No,
didn't
that was
feel like it.
definitely my bad. I'm so sorry
Okay.
because it skipped from one of them and then it wouldn't go back. I don't know what was going on. So then I was like, oh no. So that was, don't blame yourself for that. That was definitely my bad. I'm very sorry that that happened.
No, it's all right. I'm good at improvising. So and I've done story of self-trainings a million times. So like I felt good about the story I told. I think folks were able to connect and see the bigger picture and how this actually works and all that. So felt good about that. Yeah, I think the timing was right on. I think we maybe tighten up a little bit for the future and try to make it a little more dynamic and less presentational, but we only have an hour, so there's only so much we can do. But good questions in the chat.
Yeah, I agree with what you said regarding the elements and just making it a little bit more engaging. But people really appreciated it. I was so happy to hear that at the end, all the positive feedback. Thank you, Jesus Ramon, for dropping that rating question. Because seeing the 5s come in, I was like, this is so cute. Thank you. I appreciate this so much. Yeah, anything else folks would like to uplift?
I think it went really, really well. Again, very happy with the interpreting. Very, very simultaneous. I think usually we're like Spanish speakers were like maybe like a full minute behind what's going on, but it was very much on key. And I appreciated that the interpreters were able to actually capture that emotion when Polo and Ed were sharing their stories. I think sometimes, you just hear kind of like the flat and then they said this and you're like, okay, cool, but like I'm not feeling it. But all of that was communicated, I think, and so it was very effective, very, very great. I think we should keep them around and give them the moon and the stars. And I think, yeah, maybe for our next trainings, we might want to brainstorm maybe like 1 or 2 questions just to encourage people to engage in the chat and to or to put emojis down. I appreciated Polo, where you were like, put a thumbs up or raise your hand. I think it's more for us, because that way we know people are paying attention and we know that they're watching, because it's great that we have 150 something people, 200 people, but I think them seeing each other engaging in the chat goes, oh, I need to pay attention to this too. And so, yeah, just maybe we can in the Slack brainstorm like 1 or 2 questions that we want to ask halfway through, and see how that plays out.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion. Maybe we can work on it together. For next week, I know Daniela's going to be facilitating, and then for the final one, it's going to be between Chloe and or Sakina, depending just availability. But thank you for that. I think that's great. And we do want to encourage folks to be a little bit more active, drop where they're from, organizations, as well as using the emojis to engage, which I think always helps with the energy and keeping people just present. Anything else before closing out? Well, alrighty, folks, just want to congratulate this team for all it's been put for the months that we've been planning and putting this stuff together. I'm really, really happy. Congratulations to Natalie on your first training as well. And thank you so much for supporting us. We really appreciate it. And yeah, I hope you all have a good day and look forward to seeing folks in person soon. Take care, everyone.
Sounds good. Take care.
Bye.